name is Dr. Beth Brooks, and I'm here today to talk about one of the favorite topics of mine about why employees quit and what we can do to enhance your recruitment efforts to prevent some of those quitting behaviors. So what's happened, golly, we've been studying turnover for nearly 100 years. And over that time, there's been research, particularly why people quit, and then a whole nother stream of research about how people quit. And over time now, those two strains of research have been melded together. And so now we have a lot more knowledge and information about what are some of the specific behaviors you might see in your workforce that can tip you off that maybe there's a potential turnover coming in your organization. So one of the things to think about is this idea of a shock. A shock is something that happens in the organization where the employees are maybe a little taken aback. Maybe it's a new boss. Maybe there's a merger on the horizon. Maybe a change in the compensation program or change in the benefits. This shock can be inside your organization, but it can also be outside the organization. So sort of keep your eye on those kinds of things that happen in the organization because they may give you some clues about what's coming down the road. And so with this idea of a shock in mind, generally there's these four attributes of employees about how they quit. Do they already have a job offer in hand? Do they think about quitting? Or sometimes they're thinking about quitting, but they're not too definite yet. And then we have folks that are just impulsive quitters. And I will explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And then this whole idea about why employees quit. There's generally some different behaviors or expectations, if you will, in our world, in the work world, where it sort of can influence whether or not your employee might think about quitting. So some employees will stay, and because they have this affect, they love their job, they like the people they work with, their work makes them feel good, and they're really attached to your organization. And then there's folks who have this attitude of, well, I have this contract, right? I am obligated to work and give my all, and I'm going to finish this project. And I have an agreement, if you will, with this organization to perform this work. And then some people are thinking, gosh, I really like the folks I work with. They have this, they're in this constituent feeling where they're connected to the folks that they're with. And then sometimes folks ask themselves, could I even find another job? Are there alternatives in the market? And certainly depending on what's going on in the external market, that may be yes or no. And sometimes folks are really very calculating in how they quit, right? They will quit maybe at the end of a contract or the end of finishing school, or if they don't get promoted, or if there's a change in leadership. They have this idea, I'm going to quit in those instances. Certainly expectations of our family and society, it's considered, normal, if you will, to be working. So to not be working maybe looks less socially appealing, so that might drive whether someone decides to quit or not. And then sometimes it's just too darn much work to look for a new job, and so employees will just obviously stay in the organization because the effort of looking is more than they want to invest at that point. And then there's also those moral reasons. If you hop around too much, that might not look good on your resume. So if you take these kind of reasons, these personal reasons, and you meld those with this idea of how people quit, we end up with these four kinds of quitters. And some are impulsive because they're not attached to the organization. They have no plan, they have no job. They just are going to and quit because they don't really feel that invested in the organization. And I'll talk about, again, some strategies that you can think about from a recruitment perspective to mitigate any kind of impulsive quitting. And then the comparison quitters are folks that might leave the organization because they don't think that they can maybe achieve their career goals, or they don't understand all the benefits that you offer, or they think the job, the grass is greener down the street. And so this is all about how much those folks will be comparing what do you have as an organization and what might they have down the street if they were to leave. And then we have pre-planned quitters, and those are the folks, frankly, that your organization can do nothing about, typically. And I'll explain more. The pre-planned quitters is one of those phenomenon that happens in our workplaces that typically aren't anything that you can do a whole lot about. It could be a retirement is impending, a spouse is relocating, it's finishing finishing school, and there's a time to potentially move on. And then our conditional quitters are folks that probably don't have a job offer in hand, but if something happens, for instance, a shock, they may decide to quit and leave your organization. So you have to be really mindful of those shocks, because these conditional quitters kind of are running that if then script in their mind. So we've got the 4 types of quitters. So now I want to talk about what do you do from a recruitment perspective to think through how to prevent some of that quitting behavior. So from the very first beginning, our impulsive quitters, they're, again, remember, they don't have sufficient attachment. How well have we interviewed? How well do they have a realistic job preview? How did we assess their fit during the interview process? So do they know sort of what they're getting into? And so the realistic job preview is a really important strategy for your organization to consider. With our comparison quitters, make really, really sure that you're really clear with candidates about what kind of career aspirations can they achieve in your organization, and what's the total compensation, not just their salary. Comparison quitters can be, thinking that things are better, forgetting that your organization is a great place to work, and perhaps you need to be thinking about how do you keep your own folks engaged in reselling yourself to them. Maybe it's a total compensation statement. That is one strategy. Tuition reimbursement, a boomerang program. If a comparison quitter leaves, you can always try to bring them back into your organization. And then I said the pre-planned quitters, those are really hard to mitigate them leaving, but it's all about you as an organization understanding who's in your workforce, when do you anticipate retirements, when are retention bonuses coming up, when are any kind of hiring bonuses, which I frown on or prefer to use retention, because a hiring bonus sets up more pre-planned quitting. As soon as that requirement's done, then someone starts looking. So think about whether you want to do a recruitment retention bonus or a hiring bonus. And then those conditional quitters, it's all about the work environment. Is it, what are we doing about incivility and bullying? Do we have really skilled managers? So those are the kinds of activities that if then happens, and we know this, employees tend to leave their manager, not their organization. So how are we helping managers be really skilled at what they do? The other thing about conditional quitters, talking about what you're doing around staffing and scheduling, because that'll always come up in an interview. And be honest about those things. I think the worst thing you can do in the interview process is not be honest. And that's back to the realistic job preview. That not being honest will create turnover. So think about some of those ways that you're talking to your candidates when they first express interest. Thank you all for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you on our next video. And if you need any information, references, citations, would like to talk to one of our team members, just reach out to us at hire.vivian.com. And thank you.